Hello and welcome once again to Golf News Straight Bat. We're in the thick of the Super 12s action of the T20 World Cup now. And joining me to discuss today's matches are Mr. Cricket UAE, Anis Sajan, and Golf News expert Gautam. Anis, commiserations. Give us your thoughts on the two matches today, please.
Hello, Imran. Hello, Mr. Gautam. Yes, India was expected that they would bounce back after a week-long break, but I'm afraid they have been bounced out by New Zealand in this must-win match to an extent that it was a much bad defeat than what we lost to Pakistan. Okay, India lost to Pakistan by 10 wickets, but here India were pathetic with the bat. They managed to score 110. And when New Zealand came on to bat, they had a lot of more intent. They made sure that they finished the match quite soon so that they can take the net run rate ahead, because in the eventuality of a three teams falling on the same points, that net run rate will help them, and that is what is going to probably hurt India more. But nonetheless, India were poor and the better team on the day deserved to win.
Okay, let's start with the first match of today was Afghanistan against Namibia. It was the first T20 meeting between the two teams, and it was Afghanistan who won by 62 runs. I mean, it was always going to be hard for Namibia. They're not a serious cricket team, are they? Really? Let's be honest here. They've only got 5 cricket pitches in the whole country. I've read that stat just today. Half of their players are part-time players. What are they doing in the World Cup, to be honest? I mean, they're going to be hammered every single game, aren't they? Anis, what do you think?
Well, to be very honest, like you mentioned, they have only 5 pitches. They do not have the experience. They've come through so much. It's a credit to them, thanks to David Wiese and a couple of players. But like you expected, Afghanistan to walk through them and get their net run rate further high. So that's what other teams, whether it is New Zealand, India, will be hoping, that when they play teams like Namibia or Scotland, you up your net run rate as much as possible, and Afghanistan has done that.
Gautam, can you ever see Namibia being a serious cricket team?
Yeah, I mean, in cricket, the idea is clearly to involve as many teams as possible and try and get them into the mainstream. I mean, when Afghanistan and Ireland started, I mean, who would have thought that they would finally make, they will be full test playing nations one day. But what happens is, even if you make them full test playing nations, when there is always that, that gulf in standard. I mean, when Afghanistan play a test match, possibly you may see them, losing in 2.5 days. But if they play 2020, they can really give you a hard time. So if you don't keep the doors open, then it will be as it is. The space is not much. So you will have those 8 to 10 countries playing cricket, over and over again. So that's what ICC does is in the shortest format, they keep that window open. They increase the number of teams just to accommodate them. This Super 12. It's just to accommodate them, and sometimes when they come up with some extraordinary performances, it becomes really a heartwarming story. So that's about it.
That's a good point, yeah. There was some surprising news today from the Afghanistan camp when the former captain, Asghar Afghan, announced that he was going to retire after today's game from all formats of the game as well. So we were treated to a few of his trademark big shots for the last time before he was out for 31 runs. But are you surprised to see him retire? I mean, he's only 33 years old. He's played 75 T20 games. He's had over 100 one-day internationals. He's played 6 test matches. And I mean, with the experience that he's got and with the young team that they've got, I mean, surely that's the kind of player that you want to stick around. I mean, it just seems like a very strange decision for him to leave. What do you think, Anis?
I'm surprised myself. As you said, he's just 33 years old, but that's how sometimes players take decisions. We wouldn't know the inside part, what has actually happened. But good to bow out on a high. He scored some useful runs and Afghanistan won. That's what matters. We wouldn't know, as I said again, the reason for him to retire so early. We'll have to probably wait and find out after some developments happen.
Gautam, surprised to see such a good, talented player leave so soon?
Yes, the thing is, as Anis said, that, we don't know what the inside story is. His thinking could be, there had been a bit of a, political shift in the country. So his thinking could be that, let me leave it at the hands of younger players. That, well, that could also be it. But having said that, I mean, the current captain of the team is virtually his age in Mohammad Nabi. So we don't know that. But yes, I mean, this guy was certainly one of the, when they were just coming up, since then we knew about this guy. Because of the peculiarity of his name, Asghar Afghan. So he he was a kind of very talismanic figure who, whenever they took on a big opposition, he had something to do, either with the bat or with the ball. So it's quite a loss for them, honestly. I mean, because they don't have that surfeit of a talent really. So it was quite a bit of a shock.
It was a surprise. Okay, Afghanistan move on to 4 points, and their net run rate is looking really good. They after they thrashed Scotland the other day, and they're in a decent position now to make the semi-finals. I don't think too many people would have given them much opportunity to do that. But anyway, they're doing pretty well. The next game was India against New Zealand, and it was always going to be one of the standout fixtures of the tournament. But defeat in their opening matches made it absolutely huge for both teams tonight. They both needed to get a win to get the tournaments back on track. New Zealand hadn't played for 5 days, I think, and India hadn't played for 7 days before their last matches. And in the end, New Zealand ran out pretty comfortable winners by 8 wickets. How disappointing a performance was that from Kohli's men today, Anis?
Very disappointing. Let's be very honest. We were all thinking that this break of 1 week probably would give Virat Kohli and his boys to reflect on the mistakes and go back to the drawing board. And we always keep saying about New Zealand as the bogey team, but let us accept the fact that I heard a very good comment by Mark Nicholas, who mentioned that why does New Zealand get across India? He mentioned that they are the boys who are never under the radar. They are the boys who are not the glamour boys. They come up with less expectations, but they deliver above their weight. And I'm afraid today, India, we're under a lot of pressure. In spite of playing so much of IPL cricket, getting used to the conditions, they were the team which looked under pressure from the first over. Rather, you can say India were lucky. A couple of catches were dropped and some balls going here and there, but they did not capitalize. There was no intent. Whereas on the other side, New Zealand were much more up to above their weight. As I said, they bowled well, they fielded well, and most importantly, they held their nerves whenever it mattered. And in this case, I believe they have given the knockout punch to India. India will be asking for too much to get through into the next 4.
Oh, you don't think they're going to make it now?
I'll be very honest. You see, now too many things need to go in their favor. First and foremost, Afghanistan needs to beat New Zealand. If New Zealand beat Afghanistan, which is their last game of the tournament, that ends the story. Unless there's an upset where Scotland defeats New Zealand or Namibia defeats New Zealand. And most importantly, India needs to first defeat Afghanistan, which is not an easy team to get through. If India defeats Afghanistan and Afghanistan goes on to lose to New Zealand, that's the end of the story. But if India lose to Afghanistan, India is out. So we are asking for too much from Team India. At the moment, they need to take one match at a time. First thing, they play on the same day when New Zealand plays Scotland. So if India get past Afghanistan, and probably there is an upset by Scotland against New Zealand, then there's a glimmer of hope. Otherwise, I believe it's asking for too much, because India's net run rate, I'm afraid, is very poor, is minus 1.9, whereas New Zealand is 0.70 and Afghanistan is 3 something. So the net run rate is also hurting. So too many things have to go in India's favor. And you cannot expect this to happen unless the gods are in your favor.
Gautam, Rohit Sharma was dropped on his very first ball, but he didn't make any opportunity of his second lifeline. He was out for, I think, 14 runs. And in the first 6 overs, India had made a pretty slow start. The power play went all New Zealand's way. Did that increase the pressure on the Indian batsmen?
Yes, of course. I mean, I would like to put this question to our Anis Bhai, that, you come back after 7 days, and what we see is the first thing that you've done is you've tinkered with the opening pair. I mean, if you're doing a conventional thinking of a left-right combination, you could have got Rohit and Ishan Kishan in. So what was the thinking behind this? Because when did we last see Rohit bat at number 3 in white ball cricket? When did we last see Virat bat at number 4 in white ball cricket? I mean, what was the thinking? I mean, they wanted to, this is just to tackle their spinners. What do you think, Anis?
Well, I'm glad you asked me this question, Gautam. You're absolutely right that when did we last see Rohit coming at number 3? I mean, if you had to get Ishan Kishan, you're right, you wanted to have a left and right combination. You would have probably put Rahul number 3. The only reason I see Rahul coming up because he was the one who had scored more runs in the IPL. In fact, was the orange cap holder. But Virat Kohli is the backbone of your team and he needs to hold and anchor the innings. And mind you, against Pakistan, India were off to a much poorer start. But that is time when Virat Kohli has analyzed and assessed the wicket. And today's wicket, I'm telling you, was much more difficult. But I'm afraid the pressure of losing wickets and not getting runs put them so much on the back foot that Virat Kohli had to go for that ugly slog, which you hardly see Virat Kohli playing. He's one of those guys who plays the singles and doubles and the other guys plays around him. And today that pressure of him batting at number 4 and wickets have fallen ahead of him made him play that fall shot. And you have to blame the batsmen. They did not have the intent. They played under pressure and played false shots, which led to New Zealand bowling totally on a different wicket, whereas India were bowling looked like on a belter of a wicket.
Right. Just on top of this, Imran, if you may just allow me.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it seemed, Anis bhai, it was a kind of brain freeze. For 71 balls, 70 balls, you don't hit boundaries. And look at the names who are coming in. I mean, these are the guys who, during IPL, they create an absolute mayhem. They win matches from improbable situations. So, what do you make of that?
It's fear, nothing else, Gautam. I mean, there's nothing else. When you lose your first game and when you know that there is a team which is playing against you, has always beaten you. So there is always that fear. So there was not that bravery. Like in IPL, we say that, yes, it gets the best out of you. But that's what you need to show it in an international match. And I'm afraid all the batsmen, you can't even point one player who played with that freedom or intent. And I'm afraid the moment you lose Virat Kohli, I've always kept repeating that Virat Kohli is the backbone of your team. No matter you talk about the Rohit Sharmas, the Rahuls, the Pants, the Pandyas. If you lose Virat Kohli early, even though he came at number 4 today, it opens that big hole. It rather creates a big hole, and which we could see that in spite of playing 24 balls, Pandya could score only 24. Pants batting for 18 balls, scored 18. That's not Team India. So playing an international game is a total different kettle of fish. Playing an IPL is totally different.
I read an interesting tweet from Michael Vaughan. He was saying that India are playing 2010 cricket. He says the game has moved on. What do you guys make of that statement? Is he right?
Gautam, you can go and answer this question.
Yeah, see, I mean, I wouldn't make much of Michael Vaughan's tweets because he has been on a clickbait mode at least for the last 2 years. I mean, it was well after Vaughan's generation. What happened was in 2015 World Cup in Australia, England were out in the first round. So that's when they collectively sat down together, and it was largely due to Ewan Morgan. Andrew Strauss was then the director of cricket of ECB. So that's where they decided that we were going to change the way we play the limited overs cricket. And then these guys from 2015 onwards, they also started coming to play in the IPL, be it Josh Butler, be it Jason Roy, be it Morgan. Morgan was always a bit of a journeyman. Morgan, even before IPL, I think Morgan has come and played for Anis's team in T10. So he didn't have much of an inhibition. He came and he was trying to experiment, in this form of slang bang cricket. So that's the result which you are seeing now. I mean, it's not because if he says that India were playing 2010 variety of cricket, what goes on in the IPL? See, IPL is at the end of the day a league which kind of changed the landscape of the way the game is played. So that's not right. I mean, it was a pathetic batting performance. Let's put it that
absolutely.
way. So
below
that's my take.
Batting performance.
Gautam, you mentioned the Indian Premier League. A lot of the players the New Zealand players play in the Indian Premier League. We know that the season's just concluded here recently. So those players would have been used to the conditions. Do you think maybe that would have helped them today?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, see, there's another thing. I mean, there is hardly any element of mystery or surprise left. That X doesn't know what Y is going to do. That is no longer left. So that's a big plus for the overseas players.
And Anis, I think we've got to give, I guess, a bit of credit where it's due. Sodhi's spell was really good. He got 2 for 17 in his 4 overs, and it seemed like the Indian batsmen just couldn't play him. How good was he today?
Both Sodhi as well as Santner were spectacular. I remember in 2016, both had given nightmares to India in Nagpur pitch. And again, I will talk about Santner in the 2019 World Cup. He was the one who bowled on that wicket of Manchester as if he was bowling on a minefield. Like, Indian players still have not found a way to go after him. And I'm afraid he doesn't get a chance in the Chennai Super King team. He did not play a single game. So that shows the caliber and the standard. So that's what I was trying to say, Imran. These boys are not the flamboyant or the glamour boys. They are the one who come and do their job clinically and without making any big noise like the Pandyas and the Rohit Sharmas. They do their job clinically, and that's why they are successful. I'm not taking away what the other guys do in the IPL, but what matters is what you do on the international forum. You might score tons of runs in IPL, you might get tons of wickets in the IPL, but if you don't score in an international tournament, or you don't play when it matters, that's where the temperament of a player is tested. And today, I'm afraid India's temperament of all the players were exposed very poorly by New Zealand once again.
I mean, India needed an early breakthrough, and they did get one. Bumrah got the wicket of Guptill, but then Williamson came in and he steadied the ship, and Daryl Mitchell, he more or less won the game himself. He was unlucky not to get his half century. Was out in 49. New Zealand won. I mean, what this result does do is really leaves India's World Cup in a bit of a mess now. They face Afghanistan in the next game, and from the way that they've played their last 2 games, Afghanistan will probably really fancy their chances now, won't they? Anis, what do you think?
Oh yes, they have quality spinners, and India will be under more pressure than Afghanistan. The only advantage, I only hope that for a change, Virat Kohli can win that toss. I'm not trying to give an excuse, because I have written a piece about tosses, that most of the teams have won the tosses and won the match. But if India has a glimmer of hope, probably if they win the toss, bowl the opposition out, because India's 88% of the wins have come batting second, be it a normal international or probably a T20. So if India wins that toss, they know what target they need to chase in how many overs. That's the only hope. But you rightly mentioned, Afghanistan is not a team that you can just have a walk in the park. You'll have to play out of your skins, as you found Pakistan had a tough time till Asif hit that 4 sixes. So to first, as I said, India needs to take game after game. First, ensure that they beat Afghanistan. The net run rate can be taken care in the game against Namibia and Scotland. Ensure that you win against Afghanistan and take that first 2 points. You can think about the net run rate, because the next 2 games is against Namibia and Scotland, and then hope that Afghanistan beat New Zealand.
Anis, just to tag on to that point, very important point that you made there. This is a serious question, guys. I mean, everyone's seen a cricket match being impacted by rain. So we have the Duckworth-Lewis method, the calculator to figure out the score. Do you think that there should be a dew calculator? Because honestly, it seems unfair that you're going into a World Cup match and you may face a huge disadvantage just because of the toss of a coin. Gautam, what do you think?
See, you've got an interesting point there, but it's worth throwing this idea to the ICC. But what happens is, dew is such a kind of subjective thing. I mean, in Dubai, you get dew one day, which made possibly, let's say, it made some yesterday England's chase so easy, but the previous day it was told that there was hardly any dew. So that Pakistan is also on a given, hardly any dew. Then again, in the Pakistan-New Zealand match in Sharjah, there was apparently no dew. I mean, that's what I learned by reading.
Yes.
So because it's so subjective and it's related to, the humidity part or whatever, you can't possibly pin and take it as a kind of occupational hazard. Like the wickets are different, you'll have to treat it like that. But yes, the toss makes a lot of difference in that case, as you rightly pointed out.
It's made a huge difference so far. Clearly, it seems so far, if you win the toss, that's half the game won. Anyway, guys, commiserations yet again. That's all from us for tonight. I'd like to thank my guests for coming on to the show. There's just one game tomorrow, England against Sri Lanka, so we'll be back on tomorrow night to see how they got on. In the meantime, you can head to gulfnews.com for all the latest news, reviews, comments, analysis, videos, and a ton more. Thanks, guys, and good night.